Rockies show. Jake Hari, Adam Scherer filling in for Laffy. We have 6 games to talk about this morning and then kind of a weird afternoon slate. So we're just going to focus on the early. I'm assuming that's what everybody wants us to do. Adam, how are you doing this morning?
Doing pretty good. Looking forward to having a night off for once. How about you?
Yeah, it'll be weird. I'll probably play some sort of MLB or I'll play NBA Showdown. You going to play any NBA at all?
No, I think I'm going apartment or not apartment furniture shopping. So it'll be nice to actually like not have to wait and go at like 8 o'clock.
Yeah, true. Uh, Furniture shopping, that sounds expensive, but judging by
Yeah,
what you did yesterday, I think you could probably afford some pretty nice furniture. I have your,
yeah, good timing.
what's that?
I said it was good timing.
Yeah, no kidding. I have your lineups pulled up yesterday, uh, and you had so many KC Milwaukee stacks. I couldn't believe my eyes when I opened this. Like, I think you had just 4 3 here. Let me see. I think just 4 threes. You had like 37 KC Milwaukee's. Did you intend to do that?
Sort of. I was intending to get leverage on the field because I thought that Michael Waka is just bad, and I thought he was going to be really popular. I wasn't intending to really load up against Luis Castillo because I think he's really good, but that kind of just is how it worked out. The only spot that the only thing that I wasn't intending was I didn't really want all of those teams to be Kansas City plus Milwaukee. I would have liked to have Kansas City mixed in with some other teams, but it worked out okay.
Yeah, it definitely worked out okay. So you had 37-5-4 KC Milwaukee's. I'm assuming that includes probably Keller or
Keller,
Davies.
yeah.
And then 18-6 threes, 12-6 4s, 7-4-4, like just the nut combo all over the place. So you were all over the top of the leaderboard. I saw you. I was kind of tracking you, and I saw people talking about how you were close, and looked like you didn't get the top prize, but it looked like it worked out okay for you. So,
Yeah, not a bad day. Would have been better if Marcana could have just like flown out instead of hitting a home run, but
oh, was
oh
that what
well.
buried you? The Kana homer?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I don't see him
Yeah,
on
right
here.
before his homer, I was like, I think 1 through 5 or 2 through 6 in like the big top heavy tournament or something. But that hurt me.
Yeah, well, you crushed nonetheless. What do you think of the tournaments today? I haven't really looked at too much. I just entered the normal ones I enter in like the lower dollar stuff. Do you think that there's anything that sticks out to you? You're probably gonna play this 16, right?
Yeah, I haven't looked at any of the high dollar stuff. I did notice that the $16 on DraftKings is, I guess, a little bit better.
Mm.
Like it's better than yesterday. It's 50K to first, third is 10K instead of 5K, so making a little bit of progress there, I guess.
Yeah, and there are also, of course, tournaments on Yahoo. They are starting their main slate at 110 Eastern. It looks like they got a $10 with 800 bucks to first, $5 as well, $1 as well. So we are presented by Yahoo, of course. We love playing over there. Don't have to compete with a bunch of pros. I mean, there's a handful of them, but not 150 lineups, less rake, management fees, they call them over there. So when you guys do sign up to play on Yahoo, which you should be doing if you're not playing a ton of volume every day, um, use our promo code. I believe promo code Osmo gets you $30 of Yahoo Sports rewards points. Um, yeah, so I'm going to be playing on Yahoo today. Some, especially because the slate sizes are different on all the different sites. I think FanDuel is running a very early and then an early. I'm not exactly sure. I don't think I'm going to play on FanDuel today. It's probably just going to be a DraftKings and Yahoo day for me. Do you have any idea what FanDuel is doing?
I think they have a 5 gamer.
Oh, they
So
do?
I think they have the same slate as DraftKings except without the Washington game.
Okay. So maybe it's the same slate as Yahoo. I guess I haven't looked at FanDuel today.
No, Yahoo has like the Giants game and the Astros game,
Oh,
I think.
all right. Well, maybe the Yahoo slate will go deeper, so even or later into the day. So maybe a longer sweat if you guys are in for that. Today, we're going to talk about the first 6 games and basically just cover it. I don't know if you've looked at the last few on the day, but we can just go over those generally. I'm not sure what the slates actually look like for those just yet. Um, Yeah, all right. Let's go into the Nationals and the Mets. We have Steven Strasburg going up against Steven Matz. 4.1 implied total for the Nats, 3.5 for the Mets. Strasburg 11K on DraftKings. Steven Matz 7,300 here. These two guys are both getting quite a bit of ownership on DraftKings. Do you prefer one or both or neither?
Yeah, I prefer Strasburg. Obviously he's really good. He's the best pitcher on the slate. The only pitcher really making any sort of argument there would be Boyd, for number two. But even he's still pretty clearly behind Strasburg in most metrics. So, um, really good spot for Strasburg. You have a Mets team who I don't think we have. Yeah, we don't have a lineup yet, but you had Robinson Cano leave yesterday's game early. You have Nimmo and Conforto; they're both injured. Jeff McNeil may or may not play today. You're looking at a right-handed heavy lineup that has a lot of strikeouts in it. So I think that it's a pretty appealing spot for Strasburg. 31% strikeout rate to righties this year, 33.6% to lefties, not allowing power to either side. And looking at some other stats, like he's always been a good pitcher, but this year he's really kind of separating and putting himself in that real top tier. If you look at PCRA, which is one of my favorite new stats to look at, he ranks fourth behind Blake Snell, Garrett Cole, and Chris Sale. His ERA this year is 3.32. His PCRA is 2.66, so two-thirds of a run lower than his ERA. 32% strikeout percentage this year, only 6.3% walk percentage. Just everything looking really, really good for Strasburg. So he's going to be popular, but I think he really should be. As far as Matz goes, I think that he's talented. I think that it's a really scary spot for him. You have a right-handed heavy lineup for the Nats, and on top of that, you have speed. Especially Trey Turner at the top of the lineup, we know is going to run on anyone, but Matz is really bad at holding runners. So anytime Turner gets on base, it's an extra base hit basically. Robles has speed, and then you have right-handed power in guys like Rendon and Kendrick. Matz this year has allowed a 246 ISO to righties. Has always kind of had trouble with home runs and with holding runners. So I think that from a talent perspective, he's probably underpriced a little bit, but he projects slightly better than everyone else in his price range, which will probably drive up his ownership. And it makes me actually in tournaments interested in grabbing some of these Washington guys.
Which Washington guys are you looking at? So you mentioned Turner. Are you just trying to stack up the top of the lineup, or is there anyone kind of lower down? Are you looking at Robles in the 7th spot?
Yeah. I mean, stacking up the top's fine, but Turner would be the number one guy for me. Robles, I think, is a really good tournament play because he's hitting 7th. He has the speed to run on Mats. He obviously has power, and people just don't like going to the bottom of the order. So I do like him quite a bit. If you can afford Anthony Rendon, I think that's a really good play. Just an overall a really good hitter, but you really have to pay for him. Turner, my favorite guy here, though, just because he's leading off and is going to steal any chance he gets.
Yeah, so that was the one thing that stuck out to me. It's just the stolen base matchup against Steven Matz, so that's a really nice way to get leverage on him. And I just think stolen bases, I'm pretty sure we've talked about it at some point. They're just undervalued still. We talk about them quite a bit, but people don't look for like stolen bases in their stacks very often. And I don't know if that's what helped KC yesterday, but they're like a team that comes to mind. Just a ton of speed, maybe not the best hitters, but you can just rack up points so quickly if you get a pitcher that struggles with guys on the base path. So I'll definitely be looking into some
and it's predictable. I mean, it's not, we spend all day talking about, who's going to hit home runs, and you can get 5 points just by being like, okay, if this guy gets a single, you're getting an extra 5 points, because in a lot of spots like this one, it's really that easy to predict.
Yep. I love it. So, yeah, I can't really disagree with either of the ownerships here, although I will be targeting against Mets quite a bit more than Strasburg. Are there any bats that stick out to you for the Mets if you are trying to gain leverage against Strasburg?
No, not individually. I mean, if you were looking to gain leverage on Strasburg, I think the best approach is probably actually to stack against him, because of the type of pitcher he doesn't have a home run issue. He's just a really good pitcher. So if anyone on the Mets is in a favorable spot, it's because Strasburg just doesn't have it, which is going to happen, a couple times this season. And you would want all the hitters. And then on top of that, it's a bad Washington bullpen, so you get upside there. So like Max Scherzer is a pitcher that I like grabbing, leverage one-offs against, because he will give up home runs to lefties. But Strasburg's not that type of guy. So I think that if you were looking to leverage against him, you may as well just have, as many Mets as you can get.
Sure, that makes sense. Looking at what we have for the ownerships today, it's kind of funky with the slates being different on different sites. So if you guys are using our ownership projections, which you should be using, promo code MLB Strategy gets you 50% off your first month. If you go to the page, I would just go to the so drop down MLB ownership projections and then view all, so you can see where you can find the different slates for the different sites. So on DraftKings, you can find the ownership projections under the main tab. On FanDuel, I believe it is the early, and then Yahoo. They have the main slate for Yahoo. There's only one tab for Yahoo. So just a quick note on that: if you are looking for the FanDuel tournaments early this afternoon, you'll find those in the early tab. So, all right, are we good to move on from this Nats Mets game?
Yeah.
Cool. Let's go to Colorado and Pittsburgh. We've got Antonio Senzatella going up against Jordan Lyles. 4.3 implied total for the Rockies, 4.8 for the Pirates. Are you looking to either of these pitchers? Senzatella, possibly?
Yeah, not. I'm hoping I don't land there. In my initial crunch, I was getting to a pretty healthy amount of Senzatella just because of the price point on DraftKings. Where he's 6,400 and you have to roster two pitchers. Obviously, not looking there on FanDuel where you roster one pitcher. Not looking there on Yahoo because you have some pitchers on that slate that are cheap and not on the DraftKings slate. So, really, just kind of a DraftKings price point play. There's nothing appealing here. Senzatella is not a strikeout pitcher. Pittsburgh doesn't strike out. He's outside of core is like the only positive thing you can say. So it's not someone that I'm hoping I get a lot of. I think that there's higher upside plays too. It's a 6-game slate. He's cheap, so I'll probably have a little bit. Lyles on the other side, I do like. He actually has the third highest strikeout percentage on the slate this season. We've seen him be kind of like bipolar in games where he has some really good games and he has some other games where he gets like no swings and misses. But the curveball does look improved for him this year. You're getting a Colorado team outside of cores that, of course, isn't as good as when they're at home, which makes sense. So I think that there is some upside for Lyles. The issue I have is just his price point. I think that I don't think that he's necessarily overpriced at 8,500 on DraftKings. I think it's more that when you look at it from a ceiling perspective, it's kind of tough to justify paying more for him than for the entire range of like Steven Matz, Trevor Richards, Dylan Bundy, those guys. They all have their risks, but you're getting kind of a small pool of players that have similar ceilings to Lyles. And so from a roster construction standpoint, at least as of right now, I'm finding myself kind of spreading out amongst that tier instead of jamming in a bunch of Lyles.
Yeah, I tried to hand build today with Strasburg early this morning just to see what I could fit in, see what I kind of landed on. And I think I started with Lyles, and it was really tough to make quality lineups without getting like Marlins versus Boyd when you go Strasburg and Lyles. Like you have to jam in a couple of these super cheap bats that look to once again be chalky. So that's why I'm probably not getting to too much Lyles, but he is only 16% projected ownership right now. So not bad for him being 8,500 with strikeout upside. I think he's striking out. Did I see 30% of lefties? Is that right? 30%.
You said of lefties?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's around there. I was actually just pulling that up. He's at 30.1% of lefties, 24% of righties this year.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Does that make sense for his pitch mix? Is he a changeup guy?
He's thrown his changeup like 17.5% of the time to lefties, but where he's really getting it is he's thrown his curveball 31%. He has a 17.5% swinging strike percentage on that pitch. And then he actually also to lefties has a 13.6% swinging strike percentage on his fastball compared to 7.3% to righties. So that is probably one of two things. It's probably either not sustainable or it's just he's locating really well to lefties, which, we're far enough into the season. It's probably that.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. What about bats in this game? I don't really see much that I love on either side, but it is a healthy total for Pittsburgh. I would imagine they come in as maybe a little bit under-owned because you're looking at some of these prices for like Bell, Polanco, Marte are up there a bit. And then you've got some quality bats elsewhere, like the Cubs, who've got a big total, the Red Sox, who've got a big total, and they're kind of in that same price range. So You think Pitt goes a little bit under-owned, and then is there anyone from Colorado you want to target against Lyles?
Yeah, I think Pittsburgh probably does go under-owned just because when I crunched my first like 100 lineups just to kind of get a feel for the slate, Pittsburgh was actually the only stack that I did not get a single five-man stack of. And that's just kind of using projections and not using any of the other things that I do to get exposure to some lower owned stacks. So what that tells me is that a lot of people just aren't going to be getting to Pittsburgh. And from an optimal play standpoint, I think that's fine because, like you said, they are really expensive and they're just not really top plays at their positions in this park against the pitcher in Senzatella that generally does a pretty good job of limiting power. But on the other hand, you have a pitcher in Senzatella that doesn't miss bats. You have a Colorado bullpen that's not very good. I think that if Pittsburgh's going to go basically completely unowned on the slate, then they do offer some nice upside. As far as Colorado goes, not really that interested in targeting against Lyles, especially because most of the hitters that you want are expensive. I think that David Dahl at 3,900 on DraftKings is probably the best value from Colorado. That's probably who I'd get to the most.
Yep, I like Dahl quite a bit. He was the only one that really stuck out from a value standpoint for me when I looked over this game. And maybe Daniel Murphy if he's top betting in the top 5 or 6 at 4K. That those would be two guys I'd probably go to against Lyles, but I don't know that I'm getting to a lot of Rockies. I think I will be getting to a lot of Pirates. Maybe not in terms of volume in like 600 lineups when I crunch everything out, but when I get down to 150, I'm pretty certain I'm going to be overweight on them because I think, like you mentioned, Adam, like people are just going to go to Senzatella because he's 6,400 and he's not facing the Red Sox like Clayton Richard is. And there's just not many guys in this range, and there are some expensive bats people want to pay up for elsewhere. So I think you're going to get leverage on Pittsburgh, and they're just going to be generally underowned.
Yeah, I expect the same thing. Like I expect them to be one of my lowest owned stacks in Fantasy Cruncher, but it wouldn't be surprising at all if they are a stack that kind of stays in the lineups that I play because of their ownership.
Yep. All right, let's go to the Yankees and the Orioles. We have Masahiro Tanaka going up against Dylan Bundy. 5.4 implied total for the Yankees, 3.7 for Bundy and the Orioles. I feel like Bundy pitches against the Yankees like every other start, it seems like, for the last year and a half.
Yeah, I'll say this year it's been because they played the Yankees like 18 times already. But
it's amazing.
Yeah.
So what are you doing with Bundy here? 6,800. He's going to provide you a ton of leverage. I haven't looked at the individual ownerships for the Yankees bats. I would assume they are the mega chalk, and their lineup's actually out already. Morales at 3,400, Hicks 45 in the 2 spot. Like they've got to be the chalk stack once again, right?
Yeah, you would think so. And so that makes me really interested in Bundy on the two pitcher sites. You're obviously taking on risk. I mean, the guy gives up home runs like more than anyone in baseball. And he's in Camden Yards. He's facing a Yankees team that has a ton of power. There's obvious risk here, but when you're talking about just trying to get to the top of top heavy tournaments, one of the most powerful like tools you have to get there is by using leverage to create a clear path for yourself to pass large percentages of the field if things go your way. And Bundy gives you that because if Bundy he does have strikeout stuff. He struck out 29% of righties this year, and you only have 3 lefties in the lineup for the Yankees. So there's a clear path for how Bundy has success here. It's just a matter of if he's able to locate, if he's able to not make mistakes in the middle of the plate that get hit over the wall, and if he's able to keep the probably like 2 home runs he gives up, 2 solo shots. Obviously big ifs, but if it goes that way and Bundy gets you, 20, 25 DraftKings points, all these stacks that have Yankees are just dying off and you're passing, you're just jumping ahead of those guys. So Bundy's really interesting because I think that when you look at other guys in the price range, Trevor Richards, Steven Matz, Bundy's ceiling is just as high. He maybe has a lower probability because of the matchup, but the ceiling's just as high. And those guys don't provide you the leverage that Bundy does. So I think that he's a really, really good tournament play in lineups that you don't have the Yankees.
Yeah, I kind of really like Bundy. I'm expecting to get quite overweight on him. We've got him under 20% right now. I'm hoping that sticks. Looks like a pretty watered down Yankees lineup. Urshela batting 5th, Gardner 6th, Frazier in the 7th spot, Estrada, Romine. Just realized no Gary Sanchez on this slate. So
no Torres either.
Oh yeah, man, that lineup looks pretty rough actually for the Yankees. So Bundy's probably going to come up as far as ownership, but 6,800, like you're still seeing a 5.4 implied total for the Yankees. I would imagine there's quite a bit of ownership on both sides, and I think I side with Bundy just a little bit more. Like you mentioned, Adam, there's like not a ton of other options that give you the kind of leverage that he's going to give you. And one thing I did notice with Bundy is he was pushed to 118 pitches last game. Like that's like ace level pitch count. Not saying he's going to do that again, but like he's able to go over 100 if things are even going okay for him. The Orioles would probably rather not rely on their bullpen. So even if he gives up a solo shot or two, I think you're going to be okay with Bundy for under 7K. So that's probably where he's probably going to be one of my biggest stands on this slate this morning. And I'm probably going to be underweight on a bunch of these Yankees bats. How about Tanaka versus the Orioles here? I don't know what I'm going to do yet at $9,300 Tanaka because you can't really play him much with Strasburg and the two pitcher sites. But what do you see here with Tanaka?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's kind of an interesting spot because Baltimore is not the best offense, even though they have been hitting pretty well lately. They also don't have a ton of strikeouts in their lineup against right-handed pitching this year, coming in at around 22.5%. And it's a really weird price point, like you said, because I think that it's fine if you're getting the Tanaka of old that gets a lot of swings and misses. So far this year, his strikeouts have been down, but I do think that he's improving his splitter the last couple of starts, especially last start. He had like a 17% swinging strike percentage. He had 6 whiffs on his splitter, which I think was the most. I think it was like as many as he had in his last like 5 or 6 starts combined. So that pitch, I think, is improving, and you're going to see his strikeouts go up. The issue is just that he's at that price point where like he's a lot more expensive than the mid range, and he's kind of close to guys like Matt Boyd that are just better and in a really good spot. And then, obviously Strasburg. So I don't think I'm going to get to a lot of Tanaka. It wouldn't be surprising at all to see a good game, but it's just a price point that I don't really see myself getting to all that much.
Yeah, and he's under 20% right now, so less than half the ownership of Strasburg. I think I'm just going to eat the chalk with Strasburg and try to pay down with like a Richards or a Bundy with my second guy. I just like if I get to Tanaka, I probably will get to him in a handful of lineups, but it's going to be as the SP1, and I don't feel quite as comfortable with that because the Orioles actually aren't striking out as much as I thought. Like middle of the pack right now, they're 14th in the MLB for the active roster versus righties. They don't have a ton of power or anything like very below average WRC plus and all that, but it's just kind of a whatever spot for me for Tanaka. How about Orioles bats? And then I don't know if you talked much about the Yankees bats, so what do you think about bats overall in this game?
Yeah, so I mean, as far as the Yankees go, like if you're not rostering Bundy, then the Yankees are one of the top stacks on the slate. Not having Sanchez or Torres in the lineup obviously takes some of the power out, but it also makes them a little bit cheaper. You have Urshela batting 5th for 4,200 on DraftKings. You have Kendry Morales, who will be really popular, 3,400 batting cleanup. That's one. Morales is someone who I know Alex talks about it a lot, and it's a really good point that the Yankees are going to be popular, but because of Morales' price tag, he's going to be in a very high percentage of Yankee stacks. So if you are looking to stack the Yankees, especially if you're playing 3-max or single entry or something, and you're just trying to play that like perfect lineup for you. If you want the Yankees, you can get there and just play someone instead of Kendry Morales at first base. Whether that's paying up for Luke Voit, which probably is the best way to do it, or just pick to a different first baseman altogether. You can make contrarian Yankee stacks just by not having Morales.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, Voit was going to be the guy. Like, that's going to give you a completely different roster construction if you play Voit, because that's probably going to force you to play like Estrada or Romine or Frazier in 7, 8, 9. Right. So I mean, if you go LeMahieu, Hicks, Morales, Urshela or Gardner, like that's great. It's going to project out well, but it's not going to be contrarian enough on a slate with pretty concentrated ownership across the board. So yeah, that's a really good point. What about the?
That said, probably play Morales in cash.
Yeah, for sure. What about the Orioles?
I mean, some cheap bats there. Tanaka has always had some home run issues. This year, he's given up more power to lefties than righties. You do have probably 5 lefties in the top 6. So I don't have a ton of interest in Baltimore, but they do have upside if you're looking to make like a Strasburg Lyles lineup or something. They're probably one of the teams you can get to at reasonably low ownership. Getting to guys like Ruiz, Chris Davis, Stevie Wilkerson's cheap. So I think that there is some upside there for the price point, but more often than not, I'm going to be looking to pay up for bats and take some chances on pitching.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I don't see myself getting to a ton of Orioles. Still respect Tanaka quite a bit. And you're not getting super cheap prices on some of these top 5 guys. So it's really good Chris Davis, and that's about it as far as value, and maybe Ruiz, like you mentioned. All right, let's go to the Red Sox and the Blue Jays. We've got a 5.6 implied total for the Red Sox, 5 flat for the Blue Jays. Man, has this total come up quite a bit? I think it has. Ryan Weber going up against Clayton Richard. Is this Richard's first start of the season? Because I haven't heard a peep from him this whole year.
Yeah, coming back from the injured list to make his first start. Might be limited to like 50, 60 pitches here.
Yep. I just got that notification, actually. 50 to 60 pitches for Richard. So, I mean, he's facing the Red Sox anyways. I don't think we're playing him for this price, but he's basically crossed off, right?
Yeah, it's not like he's 4,400 like we were getting on Straley or Nova last night. There's just no chance I'm paying the same price for Richard as for pitchers who are fully stretched out and not facing the Red Sox.
Yep, just play Bundy if you're gonna do that. I would think.
Yeah.
What about this Ryan Weber guy? I'm trying to look up his pitch count and just get an idea of maybe how deep he can go against the Blue Jays, who aren't a terrible matchup. Do you have any interest in playing him at 5,900?
I don't think he's stretched out. He has been in the Red Sox bullpen for the last couple of weeks. I'm trying to pull up his pitch count as well, but I don't think I'm going to end up getting there. I think I just spend a little bit more money for some of the other pitchers on the slate. He's
63 pitches.
He pitched on the 18th. He threw 63 pitches on the 18th, so he actually probably can go 5 innings or something.
Yeah, so I'm really interested to see how he projects out, how Alex has him projecting on the site. So the rankings and projections are not out yet. The top stack tool is not out yet. But when those come out, I really want to see where Weber projects. Because if he's in double digits, I would imagine I get to a good amount of him. I would think the Blue Jays are also going to be really popular, so kind of get leverage with that play as well if he projects to be an okay play. That being said, he's $900 cheaper than Bundy, who's got a million times more upside. So may not even need to get to Weber at 5,900. But we've got a 10.5, over 10.5 implied total here in this game. Which team are you targeting, or which bats specifically do you like on both sides?
I love the Red Sox here. Obviously, that's not a hot take against Clayton Richard. On top of the fact that you're getting a lefty in Richard making his first start of the season, who against right-handed hitters has, always been kind of mediocre anyway. But you also get him on a pitch count, which means that there's a good chance you're getting a lot of innings out of this bullpen. Yesterday, the Blue Jays used 5 different relievers. They all threw at least 15 pitches. 3 of them threw more than 20 pitches. On Tuesday, Sam Gaviglio, who is one of their more stretched out relievers, I guess, threw 26 pitches. So probably not going to give you a ton of innings today. It's a really overworked bullpen right now, and they are going to need to throw more innings today. So I think it's just a spot where Boston has the potential, A, to really hit Richard well, and B, to just keep adding on runs throughout this game against the Toronto bullpen. So I love Boston as a full stack. They are really expensive, which should keep their ownership down as well. You can't really get Strasburg plus Boston very easily. So it's going to be lineups where you're paying down a pitcher, but in tournaments, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Yeah, I'm trying to build a Strasburg with the Red Sox kind of expensive parts. Even when I put in Bundy, so Bundy, Strasburg, Chavis, Bogarts, Betts, Martinez, we have 28.5 remaining for a catcher, first base, third base, and outfield. 28.5 combined, so it's basically impossible. In general, do you think that people just don't prioritize bats enough? Like they just wanted these stud pitchers in because people don't want unsafe pitching?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it's quite as much as it used to be, because people that are on shows and that have some success generally do prioritize bats in tournaments. But yeah, people still, I think, just look like when they're looking at how they want to build their lineups. People are just like, oh, I want this pitcher and this pitcher. and then I'll fill it in with bats, whatever. And it just doesn't really work that well because for one, to win tournaments in baseball, it's not like you're trying to just get all the best point per dollar plays in there because you need people to score 30 plus raw points from your hitters, and some hitters just are almost never going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, on a lot of slates, if you're looking to get to those like quote unquote safe pitchers, you're just forced onto the same teams as everyone else doing that. So even when your guys do well, like it's a point Alex made with the Marlins yesterday, if the Marlins do well, it's just going to be a really high scoring slate where you're still probably not going to win because you're competing with so many people. So it's just, I think, better in large field tournaments to be looking to get the best possible bats that you can, and then just take some chances on pitcher and hope that a couple of those guys have a good game.
Yep, 100% agree. And that's why I think in the Top Stack tool, the past couple weeks, as I've been looking at it more and more and making it a part of my process, you're just seeing these teams like they've got these massive totals and they're getting some ownership, like Houston and Boston come to mind, but they're just so expensive that people aren't kind of willing to jam them in with guys they're uncomfortable playing. Like you might have to play more Trevor Richards or Bundy to get to the Red Sox, but that's something I've been more and more willing to do just because it looks like people aren't taking advantage of these teams with high implied totals when there is a Strasburg, or last night when there was, who was it, Cole, DeGrom, and Scherzer on the slate. Like you just see the Marlins at 20+% chalk for a couple of their guys, and it's like, man, do you really want to play a chalky Marlins team that even if they go off, like you're still not even close to being profitable in tournaments. You're still a long way away. So
yeah, and I mean, just think about it in terms of ceiling. Like if you take last night's game, I think you got like 28 points from Max Scherzer, and you got like 12 points from Ivan Nova, who was like almost a little over 1/3 of the price. Nova scored like 12 points, and so basically it's a 2-run home run. So the difference there is like the same amount of points as just one extra 2-run home run from your good hitter over your bad hitter, and it's just so easy to get there. So pitching raw point scores for the most part just don't differ by as big a margin as your best hitters versus like your average hitters.
Yep, and we're seeing chalk once again. We just got an ownership update, so refresh if you are a premium member. If you're not, MLB Strategy is the promo code for 50% off your first month. It looks like Castro and Anderson once again are up there, so we're going to talk about that game actually right now, unless you've got anything else on Red Sox Blue Jays.
I mean, I guess I'll add that Toronto. You mentioned that they'd probably be popular, and for good reason. They're cheap. They let you fit pretty much whatever pitching you want. Justin Smoke has a lot of power from the left side. Guerrero's still underpriced. Grichuk's a good hitter. So the middle of that order, as a mini stack, I think makes sense. Or if you wanted to add a couple guys on for a full stack, it's fine. But Boston is the side that I prefer in that game.
Yeah, they're actually not as chalky as I anticipated. And, between Tellez and Smoke, there's a decision you have to make there because they're both first basemen on DraftKings. So maybe that's, deterring people from one or the other. It looks like Tellez is getting less ownership for $100 more. So maybe not as chalky as I thought, but I'll be interested to see kind of where I get to them once the projections come out. All right, let's talk about the chalk Marlins. We've got Miami, Detroit. Once again, 4.1 implied total for the Marlins, 5 for the Tigers. Trevor Richards and Matt Boyd on the mound here. What do we do with these chalky Marlins for the third slate in a row?
I won't be going there. I was way underweight yesterday. It sucked, but now an even tougher matchup. Daniel Norris, not a great pitcher. That's who they faced yesterday. Matt Boyd is. He's made pretty significant improvements from like the second half of last year, and they've carried over to this year. He has the second highest strikeout percentage on the slate behind Strasburg. He's 13th overall in called strike plus swinging strike percentage this year. Second on the slate behind Strasburg, just behind Justin Verlander in that stat. In PCRA, he is second on the slate, only behind Strasburg. He, I believe, ranks in the he's 13th in that stat as well, sandwiched between Jacob deGrom and Frankie Montas, just ahead of Zach Greinke as well. So, just really good across the board. 29.9% strikeout percentage. Walk percentage is down to 5.3% this season. Really, really good across the board. The issue as far as rostering him goes is that he is priced on DraftKings really close to Strasburg. So gives you a chance to be contrarian there, but you're also giving up a lot of projected points in doing so. So it makes it kind of tough. On FanDuel, you get a bigger difference because Strasburg's 11K, Boyd is 9,500. So that's pretty appealing. But then on Yahoo, Strasburg's only $2 more expensive. So again, if you're doing it, it's solely so that you get the lower owned pitcher. But as far as the Marlins bats go, it's a brutal matchup for them. Boyd is just really, really good. It's not a spot where I would want to take hitters if they were good hitters. And then you're talking about these Miami bats. Against righties this year, Boyd struck out 29.6%. He's allowed a 295 expected WOBA, 170 ISO. He's good. And so I don't really see the need to be getting to Miami.
Yeah, I kind of want to avoid that matchup all around. So I think I'm going to X out the Marlins for main stacks that I have the last couple of days. If one or two of those guys gets there, maybe I have them in a 2-man or something like that, or a 3-man. So I'm okay with getting them as my secondary stacks, but as a main stack, I think they're just going to be way, way too popular. The Marlins striking out just 19.1% versus lefties so far this season. That's bottom 5 in the MLB. So, I don't want to really play the Marlins here at all. I just have a tough time getting to Boyd on DraftKings and Yahoo, even when you factor in the leverage. And then when you look at the ownership, it's not that far apart. Like, Strasburg is the clear chalk, but Boyd is the third most owned pitcher behind Senzatella. He's right there with Senzatella as a top 2 ownership guy. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to get to a lot of Boyd because you are sacrificing quite a few points in the projection. So, I was looking at Boyd also. Like, I can't believe he's been this good all of a sudden. I know he made strides last season, but looking at his just game logs, he's been usable in basically 9 out of his 10 starts. He's had one hiccup 2 starts ago against Houston where he only went 4 innings with 2 strikeouts and 3 earned. But, like, he's just been so steady. So if there was no Strasburg on the slate, I would probably have a ton of Boyd. But since there is Strasburg, since the ownerships are close enough, I think it's going to be I'm probably going to end up underweight on Boyd, it looks like.
Yeah, like I bumped his projection from my baselines just because I know that the projections take into account a lot of data from when Boyd was just a totally different pitcher. And so I think that he should project higher than he does, but that still doesn't get me to him over Strasburg, especially because, like you said, it's not like he's projected to have no ownership.
Yeah. And actually, so the rankings and the projections just got updated 1 minute ago, so you guys can check this if you are premium members. They're actually not that far apart. They're a few points apart, but I thought there would be a bigger gap between Strasburg and Boyd. So, I don't know. This will be interesting. Tanaka also up there. But, yeah, I still think it's going to be a lot of Strasburg and a little bit of Boyd here and there. What about Richards at 7,500? Is he an option you're looking at on this early slate, or I guess main slate for DraftKings?
Yeah, he's kind of a scary pitcher to roster. He can get in trouble pretty quickly because he has one good pitch, and that is his changeup. But it is a really good changeup. It gets a lot of swings and misses. 23.5% swinging strike percentage to righties this year. He's thrown it 34.5% of the time, which is up 10 to 12% from last year. He struck out 26.2% of righties this season, and you're getting a right-handed heavy Detroit lineup. So I think that it is a high upside spot for Richards. We know that there are strikeouts in this lineup. Again, he can get in trouble quickly, but when you talk about a ceiling, he can pretty easily get you 20 to 25 points as long as he's able to throw strikes and use that changeup effectively. So I think that he does offer you the opportunity to get good bats into your lineup without sacrificing too much upside at pitcher.
Yeah, I agree. I think Richards is going to be a guy I go to quite a bit with Strasburg, or when I'm trying to get to a heavy stack. So I'm going to see a lot of like Lyles, Richards, Bundy type of stacks where I'm just loading up on bats in addition to playing him as an SP2 with Strasburg. So I think he's going to be one of my higher owned pitchers on the slate, and I'm actually not too worried about that. You look at Detroit versus righties this season, they've just been frankly pretty terrible. I believe they're still ranking number 1 as far as they're number 2, 0.1% behind the Padres in K rate versus righties, 73 WRC plus, ISO under 150, one of the worst on base percentages as well. So I don't see anything holding me back from Richards here. And his ownership actually is a lot lower than I expected right now. He's the fourth highest owned pitcher on the slate. I thought he would be like maybe number one or number two behind Strasburg, or at least approaching Strasburg, but he's not even that close despite being, I think, one of the better values on the slate. Bats here.
Was getting some Detroit. I was getting the more Detroit stacks than Miami stacks in my initial crunch, just because they also are inexpensive and you do get some leverage on Trevor Richards. But I don't anticipate either of these offenses being a spot that I go to a whole lot.
Yeah, we actually just got the stack tool updated. I want to see quick what we have for Detroit. I would imagine they're gonna come in maybe a little overowned. Oh wait, is this from last night? Let's see. Do we have all the right teams in the slate? Are there 11 games today? Is that right? 11 games in total.
I don't think so. Like there's like 9.
Oh, okay. Maybe this is from last night, but it looks like Detroit's up there. I don't know. I can't tell, but right now we're showing Detroit actually a little bit under-owned. I would be surprised.
I think this is right.
Oh, okay. Looking at other teams, Boston way up
there.
Yeah,
because
Boston and the Yankees, they have about the same implied totals, so that would make sense that those two would be the close to being the top stack on the slate. They're 0.4% apart.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Houston having 0% chance of being the top stack means it wasn't last night.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That's probably just because they're not on the slate, right?
Yeah. All the teams listed in here that aren't on the slate are at 0.
Okay, cool. I like it. All right. I probably will get to some Detroit as well. Goodrum was the guy that stuck out to me a little bit at 3,700 in the 2 spot. Gordon Beckham leading off. Man, these guys are dirt cheap on Yahoo outside of Ronnie Rodriguez, who's all of a sudden at $19 on Yahoo. Everyone else is 16 or below, and a lot of them are under 10. So Detroit, dirt cheap on Yahoo. You can definitely fit them in with Strasburg and probably even Tanaka as your SP2.
Yeah, worth mentioning too. Like Richards does give up power to righties. The strikeouts are there, but 245 ISO to right-handed hitters this year. So it's not like he's limiting power when they do make contact.
All right, let's go to the last game of the DK main slate, and then we'll just talk generally about these last few games. Phillies and Cubs, we've got a 4.6 implied total for the Phillies. Actually, 4.9 for the Phillies, 5.1 for the Cubs. Aaron Nola and John Lester on the mound. No lineups yet for this game. Looks like it's got the potential to be a Wrigley win game. 14 miles an hour blowing out to right, it looks like. Are we looking to target any pitchers here, Nola or Lester?
I'm not on the pitching. Obviously, it's not great taking pitchers in Wrigley with the wind blowing out. But on top of that, you're not really getting favorable price points on either one. And it's not like either of them has an easy matchup. You know, Lester's been better this season. He's throwing his cutter more. He's having more success, getting more strikeouts. But it's still a Philadelphia team that has a lot of right-handed power, works deep in the counts, has speed that can run on Lester. And he's, the same price point as Jordan Lyles. He's more expensive than Richards and Bundy and Matz. So I don't really see the need to get there. And then it's the same thing with Nola. Going against a Cubs team that doesn't strike out a lot, does have a lot of good hitters in their lineup. He's more expensive than Tanaka. He's almost the same price as Boyd. He's a lot more than Lyles. It's just there's no real reason for me to get to either of these pitchers.
Yeah, they just project so low, especially Nola from a value perspective. So big total against him. I mean, maybe a rising total, it looks like, even from a few minutes ago. So I don't see myself getting to either of these pitchers with the other quality options we have on the slate for cheaper. I want the Phillies against Lester. I think they're going to be one of my favorite stacks on the slate. 4.6 implied total is not one that's going to stick out to a lot of people, but I have to imagine I'm getting to a ton of Phillies. No one above 4,700 in their lineup. Harper, it's lefty-lefty. I know Lester is awesome against lefties, but I'll play Harper for 4,500. Reese Hoskins, 4,500 as well. And then Real Muto, one of my favorite catcher options, maybe my favorite without Gary Sanchez on the slate. So I'm going to get to a ton of Phillies. The one thing holding me back is I see that they're actually coming in a little over-owned right now, but still a decent chance to be the top stack.
Yep, I'm right there with you. Just favorable pricing, a decent running matchup. Lester isn't as bad at holding runners as he used to be, and Contreras, if he's in the lineup, does a lot to help that. But you still have speed with the guys at the top of this order. You have power at favorable price points with Hoskins and Real Muto. I love Andrew McCutchen leading off here in particular. I think the price tag's really appealing. He has some speed, he has some power, it kind of does everything. So I'm with you. Maybe a little bit over-owned as a stack, but I do think that they're in a good spot. On the other side, it's the same thing. They're facing a better pitcher in Nola. They're more expensive, so that's not great, but you still have a really high chance of being the top scoring stack on the slate. I think we have them coming in like fourth.
Yeah, they're right up there in the top. They're in the top five or right at, there's a bunch of teams right in the 8 to 10% range.
Yeah. So, a pretty nice spot for them. The thing, though, is I think that people are always drawn to these Wrigley win games. I think there's a good chance that you do see both of these teams a little bit over-owned, which would mean if you're getting a lot of ownership coming to these teams, it means that it's being taken away from the Yankees to some extent and the Red Sox probably to a higher extent. So I don't think that either of these teams, even with the win, are in a significantly better spot than the Red Sox are.
Yep. Red Sox, I'm going to be trying to jam them in. I'm sure you'll be doing the same. Same thing with the Yankees. Like, they're just so far, they're 6%, both of them, above any of these other teams on the slate to be the top stack right now. So that could change maybe if we see the implied totals skyrocket for the Phillies and the Cubs. And I would keep an eye on this because it's possibly a Wrigley win game, so the totals could jump really crazy in the next hour or so before lock. So just keep an eye on this. Keep an eye on the stacks tool. Because that obviously is probably our best tool on the site. Aggregates a bunch of different stuff that is really important for MLB DFS. You want to talk about these last few games? Atlanta, San Francisco, Minnesota, LA. Is Minnesota, LA even on the slate? Any slate?
No, I think it's San Francisco, Atlanta, Cleveland, Tampa, and Houston, Chicago.
Okay. Have you looked at these at all?
A little bit, like for the podcast last night, I went over it with EMAC. I think that it's kind of the reason that I didn't mention pitching for Yahoo specifically as we went through those other games. I think that it's a very different slate in terms of what you're going to do because they don't have Strasburg on the slate, and they do have 3 or 4 really underpriced pitchers in the games that aren't on the DraftKings or FanDuel slates. So I think that it's just totally different.
Yeah, this is so on DK. It's a 2-gamer for the night slate starting at 6:10 Eastern, I believe. Yahoo, you mentioned as a 3-gamer, right? Later in the day, or
Yahoo is like their main like 5-gamer is including these games.
Oh, okay. So wait, let me go to Yahoo. So which game do they start with? Are they starting with the
Miami Detroit?
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense. Interesting. Is there any guys you want to recommend or any stacks that you're going to be heavy on for this slate if you're going to play it?
Yeah, I mean, the bats are. I think Wrigley ownership will be even more concentrated because you don't have the Red Sox, you don't have the Yankees, so that. I mean, they're the best stacks, but also you'll just see more ownership there. I think that maybe getting to like a Detroit or a Cleveland or something like that. Tampa Bay, actually, I think is in a pretty decent spot. But what is really interesting is that you get, $40 Madison Bumgarner and $38 Kevin Gossman in San Francisco. I think both of those guys come out as really good pitching options. Normally, I don't like Bumgarner, but at this price point, I do. You have Adam Plutko at a $30 price tag on Yahoo. He is really bad against lefties, though. So I think that that's one spot that you can potentially target with Austin Meadows, Ji-Man Choi, Brandon Lau, having power from the left side. And then you get Corbin Martin at $33 in a high strikeout matchup against the White Sox. He's not available on any other site, but I think that getting him at a cheap price tag on Yahoo is pretty appealing.
Yeah. So Corbin Martin, you mentioned, I think just the clear best value on the Yahoo slate, $33 against the White Sox. We've seen they have power, as we saw last night. The Tilson Dong, the I don't even know who else donged for the White Sox, but they scored 9 against
Jimenez
Cole.
twice, Abreu.
Yeah, those guys carried me into some cash last night,
Yep.
so that was fun. Were they grading out really well for you as like three mans? Because when I ranked lineups, like my top 3 or 4 were Yankees stacks with White Sox three man, and it was like Tilson, like all the bad parts that ended up donging. So
I wasn't getting stacks, but like my top ranked stack out of the like 1,000 lineups I made had an Eloy Jimenez one off. So I was getting stuff like that where I didn't have high percentages of the White Sox, but in some of my top ranked lineups, I just had, like Jimenez or Abreu or someone just like thrown in.
yeah, I guess that's why you trust the projections. Because Jimenez always projects out well in Alex's. I've noticed. I get a bunch of him, no matter how tough the matchup is. Or he was batting late in the order, I think, as well. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like we kind of covered the general parts of the slate. It's a 3-gamer, 2-gamer, 5-gamer on Yahoo, so that's more of a realistic slate. On a 2 and 3-gamer, do you have any general strategies or anything that you try to stay away from or implement more on these short slates?
Obviously more willing to take hitters against pitchers because you kind of have to, or you're really playing the same lineups as everyone else. I think that is something that people probably don't do quite enough on those short slates because it's just weird. It feels weird, but that's one way that you can kind of differentiate as much as you can on those slates. But also just, leverage, factoring in leverage more than you do on the bigger slates because you're still going to get concentrated ownership. People are still going to refuse to place, quote unquote suboptimal plays. And so you're going to get really high ownership on certain guys. And you can just use that to, if you just play against the field more so on states like that, you're going to come out ahead over the course of a season.
Yeah, I think you summed it up really well. So that's probably about it. I just got a funny text from my mom. She's very proud of me for putting on my vent cover. So, hi, Mom, if you're watching. It only took me, let's see, I moved in about September. Only took me like 8 months to get that vent cover on. So, yeah, she's very proud of her son. But, yeah, I think we covered the slate pretty well. Any last words before we kind of get out of here?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Promo code MLB strategy gets you 50% off the first month. Be sure to check out the ownership and top stack tool projections are now out. Those will be updated as we get closer to lock. Make sure when you're going on the FanDuel ownership, you want to go to the early tab. So make sure you do that to find the first few games ownership. And let's see, tonight we don't have anything going on. I don't think there's a show later today, so we won't have live before lock. I'm sure a few of us will be in Slack as the day goes on. I'll be around my computer. So if you got any questions, feel free to hit us up in Slack. And thanks once again for joining us. Good luck on this slate, guys.